right, welcome back. This is Business Today, and we are speaking about the finance bill that has passed, and we have 16% VAT on fuel now official. And joining me is Ken Gishinga. Thank you so much for joining us. And now we are going to continue with the conversation. Let us look at the 16% VAT on fuel and what this means for Kenya. Now, Ken, going forward, let us look at, because first July will be Saturday. So are we seeing the 16% being effected on the 1st of July, or we're going to wait until the 14th of next month?
July might be a very difficult month because on the 1st of July, that VAT will kick in. Then on the 14th, you have your just normal fuel pricing also kick in. The drivers for the 14th are different.
Yes.
It looks at international prices, dynamics. So the worst case scenario is you might have actually two hikes, and the possibility of a litre being at 192, I think that will present challenges to businesses. Yeah.
All right, and also still on the VAT on fuel, let us just look at the effect that this will have on the border, the effect that this will have on commodities, because of course when fuel goes up, almost everything goes up. And now with the introduction of the electric motorcycles, some people was talking in social media and saying, okay, now it's now time for us to look the electric way. So when you look at the effect that this will have on the Kenyan, on the mwananchi, on the pocket, what should Kenyans look at when it comes to the 1st of next month?
Well, there'll be negative and there'll be some positive impacts to that. The negative is what you've talked about, just the cost of doing business will go up. So that means businesses will have less orders to fill because customers might not be able to afford the increased cost of services. So a slower business environment. I think on the positive side is what you've said. It might push us towards looking for alternative electric type of vehicles. So it might move us into more environmentally friendly possibilities. But there's also one positive effect that a lot of people are not thinking about, which is this: when fuel prices go up, what really happens is you start encouraging the growth of neighborhood businesses. So if you are used to going to the CBD to get your cake, for example, for a birthday of a friend, you'll start looking for the bakery within your neighborhood because the cost of transport is much cheaper. So the businesses within the neighborhood will thrive because people will want services closer to them because it's cheaper. It's cheaper to have the delivery. So I think those could be the key beneficiaries. So somebody who's looking at a neighborhood and looking at putting up a business where there's a neighborhood, I think they might actually be a big beneficiary of this outcome because people just want to reduce the distances between them and the service provider.
Right, we've looked at also some positive things right there. Right, and also still on this VAT, now going forward in terms of next year when we have such a bill again come up, what are we looking at in terms of, because there's a lot of conversation going around saying, okay, this is not the right move, this is not the right thing to do. First of all, before we even look at next year, what would have the government done in order for it not to really pinch the mwananchi?
Well, I think the challenge that the government has had is, first of all, last year they removed subsidies very early in the day. So you have a customer who's gone from an environment where subsidies have been removed, then only a few months later, taxes have been increased. So that change in the pricing environment, I think, has been too steep for a lot of people. I think in the next fiscal year, we should try and smoothen a lot of these proposals. In fact, one of the good proposals that I've had people talking about is if the proposals of this finance bill, or now Finance Act, can be commuted to 1st January 2024. Because a lot of businesses unleash their strategy in July 1st. That's when government releases money. That's when a lot of companies do businesses. So I think the idea of smoothening it's well and good to have the free market prices operate, but it's good to have a smoothening mechanism so that people don't feel they are going from one pricing regime into another pricing regime almost overnight, which makes planning business that much harder.
All right, and now let's move on and look at the 1.5% housing levy, which moved from, first of all, it was 3% initial proposal. Employer would give match that figure also, and that was supposed to go to the National Housing Fund, and now it moved to a levy, and we saw it cut down to 1.5% levy, but now officially it is a tax. Now, when you look at the payslip of a Kenyan, this is now more, it's bringing in more heart to the payslip. So when you look at this 1.5%, which is a tax, going forward, what effects will it have? Because now we have NHIF, we have NSSF, we also have now this 1.5% tax.
Yes, Kelvin, clause 76.
Yes, 76.
On the housing fund, I think it's the most controversial of it all. Because then when you think about the fuel tax, the VAT, it had been proposed about 2 years ago to 16%, but the government at that time was able to negotiate it down to 8%. But this animal called the housing fund came from absolutely nowhere.
Yes.
Keeps morphing every week. And you're right, it'll have an impact on your pay slip. For somebody in Kenya who earns 50,000 shillings, their take home is about 29,000. If you remove all the deductions.
Yes.
So 29,000, that's 58% of your gross income. So, and this is what you're supposed to take care of. So all your monthly needs. So any further deduction, and I saw one of the amendments was to include a penalty for employers who fail to remit this. It seems rather draconian. How I wish this policy would have first been proposed, gone to the KIPRAs, which look at the public policy for the government, been debated, been discussed. I don't understand why the rush to do this thing. And anytime something feels rushed, you almost feel as if there's a hidden agenda to it. You know, I wish this was something that would have been tabled for the Finance Bill 2024 after public participation, after truly understanding, you know, housing is a county function. Is there a way we can enable counties to do it? So for me, I think it's very worrisome. It feels very rushed. It feels as if we don't quite know what the end game is. And I think that's the reason you saw the MPs raising quite a number of concerns there. All right.
And also, still on this 1.5%, and now we saw the MPs saying, we saw Leader of Majority talking about housing levy is not about the houses. It's about the jobs. So looking at it, it's about the jobs. And I'm thinking about construction. I'm thinking about people who are involved in constructing these houses. And will this really bring in the aspect of employment? And will it really help? Because how it usually happens, they construct one house and then you go and then look for other places where a house is being constructed and then now you. So how will this work?
Well, that's the argument that the majority leaders put forward. The truth is the job creation will be very limited. Yes, some people will get jobs as plumbers, as masons, as carpenters, but the size of this economy, I mean, think of the content creator, think of the media personality, and that's why you saw one of the parliamentarians saying that not all our children are in the housing sector. So unemployment is actually a part of monetary policy. And how I wish they would have understood, the way you create jobs is you reduce interest rates in the market and you create a free market. So the people who want to be in housing, let them be in housing. The people who want to be in media. So when you create a free market environment, it becomes a matter of willing buyer and willing seller. Anytime the government assumes the role of a central planner and tries to direct that all jobs must be created through houses, gets into a problematic because maybe the economy is being driven by other areas. So that's why there's the wisdom of the free market. Allow the free market to operate. Reduce interest rates, reduce taxes, reduce the regulatory red tape. And Kenyans are excellent entrepreneurs. So if it's housings, they'll do those houses very well. But there are so many sectors. You cannot say all the jobs will be created through the housing fund. Only the free market, what we call the invisible hand in economics, is able to really look at what's the competitive advantage in this economy. Is it transport? Is it storage? The free market has all the information that's needed. When bureaucrats try to force growth through a particular avenue, it can actually end up backfiring.
All right, and now when we look at also among the contentious issues that were contested, when we look at the 5%, we've spoken about the content creators. Now 5%, they'll be paying that. Look at a young person who has gotten just into content creation. What does this mean to someone who uses that platform maybe to just disseminate information, make sure that at least they get something little for themselves on the side?
I think it's a double jeopardy in the sense that for the most part, you'll find a lot of people in content creation that was possibly not their first career objective. Many of them wanted to go into mainstream jobs, but because of the lack of employment opportunities, many people have explored what the digital space can offer. So first of all, we've created an environment where they know enough jobs being created. Now, people who've tried to
do something,
now you're going after them. It's good that they reconsidered the 15% down to 5%. I think it was quite good. But still, you need to think of most of these people are people who would have desired to be in the formal mainstream, and they're trying to eke a living. And my word, don't they need a break, from there? So I think that's another place where they should have really considered providing more relief.
All right, and also let's go back to the VAT and looking at. I remember there was some debate where they were looking at Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Kenya, and trying to say, okay, they have. The percentages are even higher than ours, but I believe the prices which the fuel is being sold in those countries is really not as much as it is being sold in Kenya. So what are your sentiments on this?
No, it's true. In Kenya, almost 50% of what you pay at the pump goes to taxes. So yes, in those other countries, you might be paying 18%, but the total taxation, VAT and all others, rarely gets to 30%. So you can't use that argument. And even if you did, the question is, do you want Kenya to be a competitive country? We always talk about Singapore and Malaysia. How come it is that when we are talking about our fiscal policy, you want to talk about Uganda and Tanzania? We should try to be the most competitive. And Kenya, you look at Uganda. Uganda is a very public sector-driven economy. So is Tanzania, so is Ethiopia. So Kenya is a truly market economy where there is a private sector that's vibrant and thriving. So Kenya should be the leader upon which Uganda and Tanzania should be the ones saying, we need to be like Kenya. We need to reduce our VAT. We need to reduce our interest rates. So it should not be the other way around. It should be those countries pointing to Kenya as a leader of the free market, and how the free market thrives when VAT is low. How low we have gone to try and actually emulate a high tax environment, knowing that those countries are very public sector. They need those funds. But Kenya has a very strong private sector. So we don't need a very heavy public spending. The private sector can drive. So I think it was a poor comparison, and I think we need to think better about it.
And also, still on this, information from the Finance and Planning Committee, they were talking about they'll be collecting annually close to 311 billion shillings from the VAT. So when we look at this, will this really remove us from the problem that we have of spending?
I think actually it complicates. You see, VAT essentially is a consumption tax. It's a regressive tax in of itself. So if you look at the income breakdown of this country, The majority comes from income tax, about 40%, and that's rightly so, because those are people who are paying as they produce. VAT does not encourage production. If you look at excise taxes, like what we've done on sugar, also don't encourage. And that's why I keep saying, when we talk about our tax policy, we should say, what is the objective of our tax policy? And I keep saying, our tax policy should encourage production. And that's why taxes like income tax make sense, because as you produce, you pay. But VAT, imagine somebody who's unemployed, is not part of the production in the country, yet you're subjecting him to higher prices. You know, not only is he unemployed, but now you're making his unemployedness even worse. So I think we need to go back to that national tax policy. I don't think it was ever fully debated. I was surprised to see the budget referring to it in a very fundamental way, in a way that would have assumed that everybody has discussed it and everybody is satisfied, because I think for me it's a very incomplete document. It doesn't talk about the principles, it doesn't talk about the objective, and the objective is to make a country produce more, because when you produce more, you create more jobs. When you create more jobs, you raise the standards of living, and that's not what we are seeing right now.
All right, thank you so much. Our time is up. Ken Gishinga, who is the chief economist at Mentoria, speaking to us about the finance bill that has now passed 16% on VAT, 16% on VAT on fuel, 1.5%, which is now officially a tax. It's no longer a levy or a fund on housing. And also we have the 5% on digital content creators. These were some of the issues that we were talking about today. And I believe going forward, we're going to look at what effect this will have, and from 1st July we would like to see what impact this 16% on VAT on fuel will have. Right, my name is Kelvin Yakudi. We've come to the end of business today. Mbiu ya KTN coming up next. Don't go too far.